you missed it and you want to listen to it, please do so. And we had a wonderful time. I'll never forget this retreat because of what happened to me. And it was from rock climbing, and it's simply, I should not have been rock climbing. I'm just too active, and I'm just too old, I guess. And I should leave rock climbing to Spider-Man, okay? But Pastor Man should just stay on the ground. So I'm wearing this because Dr. Kiki told me I should, because I shouldn't do like this if I, should not pop it out again. But he didn't give me a prescription that I should take a break from preaching for 6 weeks. I wish, But anyway, so I put it on because just in case I get excited in my preaching, I don't want to, go like that and so that will not be funny. Anyway, especially on video. Okay. Anyways, let's continue in the Word of God, and this is a privilege. I don't want to skip preaching because I love preaching. It is a call from God, and as you can see, I can preach a long time. But anyway, there's a story I want to start with you. It's about a sea captain who had an argument or a debate with his chief engineer. And the debate was this, is that which position is the most important in the ship? Because they discuss it, and then it was a friendly discussion, and they did discuss it with the crews, and they couldn't find a decision. They could not agree who is the most important person or the most important position in the ship. So they decided to do something different, and that is for one whole day, they're going to exchange position, okay, or roles. So the captain went below deck and went to the engine room, while the engineer, the chief, went on the bridge to be acting captain. And so after one full day, the captain came back up and told the chief and said, "Chief, I can't start the engine." I mean, his body was full of grease and everything. He had a monkey wrench in his hand. And he said, "Chief, I need your help. I just can't start the engine." And the chief said, "I know that, because I think our ship has run aground." Okay? So, the point is, when a person, has been called to has been given a certain gift, and if we're not functioning in our role or in our position that God has given us, sometimes not only will it harm each other, but we can harm the whole community. Okay, because there they are trying to, argue which one is the most important, but really everybody's important. If everybody needs to take their roles, their place where God has put us. And so we can apply this into a church as well. We as a church, as LIC, if we are more concerned about our position, who is more important, if we're not being placed in the right place, the whole church can suffer and run aground instead of sailing into destiny that God has for us. And so this is the problem with many churches as well, that sometimes some church, they don't have enough workers because they have the mentality that, that is the job of the staff. I mean, we pay you. You're the professional minister, so we pay you to do ministry. But as we learn from Pastor Henke, as we talk about the book of Ephesians, it talks that, the staff are there to equip the saints, but it is the job of the saints to do the work of the ministry. But there's other churches who may have a lot of workers, but sometimes they are placed in the wrong calling or wrong ministry because they don't know their gifting. And so that's why we want to continue what we started 2 weeks ago about the gifting, the spiritual gifts that we started a couple of weeks ago. So as you remember, one of the questions I asked was, what passages speaks about spiritual gifts, and you remember that little formula, 12, 12, and 4x4. But today, or the rest of the weeks that we have left in this month, I want to focus on the 1 Corinthians 12. Okay, we're going to talk about it. There are many of the gifting are repeats, but I'm just going to focus just on 1 Corinthians 12 for this next few weeks. And if you remember, 1 Corinthians 12 is that's one of the ways in which we can categorize them was into three components or three areas, and that is the knowledge gifts, the vocal gifts, and the power gifts. Okay. And this is just categories that, there's different ways of categorizing it, but this is one of them that I decided to choose. So today we're just going to focus on the first three, okay, which is what we call the knowledge gifts. And so that's why I entitled this message, the Spiritual Gift Part 2, specifically talking about the knowledge gifts. Now, because we're going to talk from the book of Corinthians for the first few weeks here, I think it's worthy for me to give you a little bit of background about the Corinthians. So let me just give you some facts, biblical facts, and you can get this from any commentaries and everything. So this is just some factual things that I dig out. Number one, of course, the word Corinth really means ornament, but it is Corinth is a main city of Greece, and it has many ports actually, but there are at least two major ports. And if you can see from this satellite picture, that the Corinth is located right there in between. They call it an isthmus, which is basically connecting a land that connects between two big lands there. The main part of Greece and, of course, the southwest part of that of Greece. And so because of that, Corinth become a major metropolitan, okay? And a lot of ships come there. There's a lot of trading. And so it's become a major city, okay? So a lot of cultures exchange perhaps, and unfortunately with that comes with many different paganistic religion. And so in one of the books I read, this article, it says that it is a home to at least 12 pagan temples, some quoted as high as 20, okay? And as a result, one of the negative thing about that city, of course, there were thousands of temple prostitutes there, okay? And because you probably remember that one of the temple there is probably a temple for the goddess of fertility, or Aphrodite, that's her name, of love. And so one of the things I read is that sometimes as part of the practice, part of the worship service, is actually people will come to this temple and they would have sex with these prostitutes, thinking that by doing that they will become more fertile. Okay, their business will be more fertile, their land, their animals, and so on. Okay, so today we have that too. Maybe we don't have temples where they do that kind of thing, but of course we have red light districts that these kind of things are happening. So as a result, the Corinthians were very carnal people. There are people who are focused about their bodies. They like to preserve, their looks. They're very sexually immoral. Okay, they're gluttons, some of them. So they're very, very carnal people. And also, the Corinthians, they love human wisdoms, and they like to listen to great orators. Okay, so like they don't have internet in our time, so they love listening to great speakers, speaking eloquently, talking about philosophies or different things, and especially promoting their religions. Because in that city, there were many false religions. There were many false prophets or false magicians. And this is what happened in that city, and they love to promote their own brand of religions. Now, into this context, into this backdrop, God sent Paul into that city, okay? And God encouraged Paul, says, preach boldly the gospel. And when first Paul, as usual, would preach to the Jews, but the Jews rejected him. And so because of that, he began to reach out to the Gentiles or to the pagans in that city. For 18 months, he stayed in Corinth and as a tent maker. And so there were converts, and the church began to grow, and the church was primarily consists of pagans, Gentiles. So not Jews who converted to Christianity, but Gentiles, okay? So this is the context in which Paul were coming into. So let's see what happens, starting verse 1. It says here, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I do not want you to be ignorant. Paul seems to be addressing to them some of the inquiries that the Corinthians were asking. And he also heard some bad news, because Paul wrote this first letter to the Corinthians from Ephesus. And so when he was writing to them, he was responding to some questions, or he heard some, maybe some people were emailing him or whatever, sending news that the Corinthians, because they were Gentiles before, because they were pagans before, they were mixing their previous paganistic rituals with Christianity. So we see this, for instance, in 1 Corinthians 5, verse 1. Paul says, it is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that even pagans do not tolerate. A man is sleeping with his father's wife. So Paul heard about this awful news that the Christian in Corinth was doing all kind of immorality. Okay? And in chapter 7, verse 1, he says, now for the matters you wrote about, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, and so on, it goes on. Okay, Paul, I just want to take the first part, the fact that, as you can see, the Corinthians were writing something to Paul, asking for information, okay? And chapter 8, verse 1 is the same thing. Now about food sacrificed to idols, we know that we all possess knowledge, but knowledge puffs up while love builds up. So you can see here that Paul were addressing certain inquiries or what he has heard about the Corinthians. And so he wants to correct them, to make sure that